Good morning, everyone. Continuing our discussion from the previous session, for health related fitness and sports related fitness, we were discussing about the carbohydrates, and next to carbohydrates is about the proteins. Proteins, they boost glycogen storage and they reduce muscle soreness and also promote muscle repair. So, what is the recommendation for the intake of protein? The current protein recommendation for the general population is about 0.75 grams per kg body weight per day. This is true for adults, right? So, for adults, it is about 0.75 gram of proteins per kg body weight per day. And if you're looking for strength and endurance, especially with respect to sports persons, the athletes, the protein requirements are little higher as compared to the general population. The protein requirements are increased to around 1.2 to 2 grams per kg body weight per day. So this is for the sports persons who require strength and endurance. Substantially, the requirement of protein is increased from 0.75 grams per kg body weight per day, which is for or applicable for general population, and it is increased to 1.2 to 2 gram of protein per kg body weight per day. And there is an illustration which gives you an idea about the content of the protein in each one of them. You can have a closer look at, say for example, cauliflower is having about 40% of protein, mushroom 38%, and then for the people who consume the meat, uh, so it is also a good source of protein. Eggs, they are also good source of protein. So protein is very much essential for the body, both with respect to health and sports related fitness. Moving further, next is about the fat. We have two types of fat, that is saturated fats, parishkarisida kobbinamsha, and unsaturated fats. So the good ones are unsaturated fats. The foods which are or they usually contain a mix of saturated fat and unsaturated fat. So a few examples are given over here. You can have a look at it. You have the red meat, the butter, cream, oil, the hot chips, and the skin of the poultry. So it is the fat, these are the typical examples of fat rich foods which contain a mix of saturated fats and unsaturated fats. So we all know that fat is essential for the body in small amounts. It is very high in calories. So consuming too much fat can lead to excess calorie intake, which can lead to weight gain over the period of time. So it is essential, but it is essential only in small amounts. Consuming too much of fat can lead to excess calorie intake, which can lead to weight gain over a period of time. Now, this is an illustration about the healthy high fat foods, a typical examples of healthy high fat foods. You can have the coconut oil, the fish meat, the almonds, the sunflower oil extracted from the sunflower seeds, then you have avocados, then you have the peanuts and peanut butter. So these are some of the examples which is illustrated over here with respect to healthy high fat foods. So this is recommended for both health benefit and sports related fitness, right? And what should be consumed, what should be limited, and what should be avoided with respect to fats. So we discussed that there are two types of fats, unsaturated fats and saturated fats, and there is another class of fats that is called as trans fats. What is recommended, what can be consumed is the unsaturated fats. Even in unsaturated fats, you have two types, the monounsaturated fats and polyunsaturated fats. Most of you might have heard when the advertisements we go through the PUFA, highest PUFA content. The PUFA, PUFA refers to polyunsaturated fatty acids. So some of the examples are given over here, and what you have to limit is that is less than 10% of daily calorie intake is about the saturated fats. If you really want to have or consume saturated fats, you have to limit the intake of saturated fats to less than 10% of the daily calorie intake. So for example, for an adult who weighs about 70 kilos, if the daily calorie intake is about 3000 to 4000 calories, so less than 10% of that should be the saturated fats if it is really required. And what should be completely avoided is the trans fats. So what you find in the baked products, most of the time in the baked products, but we consume these quite often. So but the data suggests that trans fats should be completely avoided. Only then you can see the health related fitness and the sports related fitness with respect to fat consumption, right? So moving further, the most important component is the water, right? Water is essential for life and hydration. Hydration is important for health, very much important for health, especially in athletics and the people who are performing any sports activities. That means they who are physically active and athletes when they are performing athletics. So it is very much important from health point of view. Why it is so important? When you are physically more active, when you are performing the athletic events, that means they are all structured physical activities, that is exercises. Exercising raises the body temperature, so the body tries to cool down in the form of sweating. So what happens? The outcome is this causes the loss of water as well as salts through the pores in the skin. Right? So when you are performing a structured physical activity, it raises the body temperature, and the body response to that is it cools down, or it tries to cool down by sweating. Now what happens if you sweat? There is loss of water along with salts through the skin. So you have to rehydrate. So consumption of water is equally important. Now, this is an illustration about the amount of water that is present in various body parts and at different ages. At birth, we have about 78% of water content, and in the first year, it is about 65%, and an adult woman is having about 55%, and an adult man is having about 60% of water content. If you just look at the different organs and their water content, brain is having about 73%, heart about 73%, lungs about 83%, kidneys 79%, muscle 79%, bones 31%, and skin 64%. So some of the values given over here may change in different resources, maybe plus or minus 2 to 3 percentages. But this is in general the amount of water present in various body parts. So if this is the case, water is very much required to have an health related fitness as well as sports related fitness. Generally, the more a person sweats, the more will be a need to drink the water. Right. So average sweat rates are estimated to be between zero point 0.5 liter per hour to 2 liter per hour during a structured physical activity. So you can sweat at a rate which is estimated between zero point 0.5 to 2 liter per hour when you are performing the exercises or a structured physical activity. Now to compensate, we have the sports drinks, then you have the milk and also energy drinks. Now the sports drinks, they contain carbohydrates which is in the form of glucose, or you can have the glucose directly mixed in water. Then you have the milk, that is skimmed milk or semi skimmed milk, ಕೆನೆ ತೆಗೆದಿರುವಂತ ಹಾಲು, because you don't want to add the ಕೆನೆಯನ್ನು ಮತ್ತೆ ಸೇರಿಸಿರುವಂಥದ್ದು ಬೇಕಾಗಿಲ್ಲ, ಯಾಕಂತಂದ್ರೆ it adds to the calories, right? So it is always better to go for skimmed or semi skimmed milk. So this is known to be used by people who perform a structured physical activity. So after they perform the activity, they go for consuming the skimmed or semi skimmed milk. Then you have some energy drinks available. So they contain stimulants, say for example caffeine. So all these are with respect to sports related fitness as well as health related fitness, right? So we will move on to another concept, that is feeding problems in children with special needs. So we will be concentrating on feeding problems in infancy and early childhood, the identification and management. We will not go into the details of these concepts. We will try to understand in a concise way, in a nutshell, what are the feeding problems in children with special needs. We might have seen several children around us with special needs. That means with disabilities, right? So what are the special needs that has to be addressed, or the issues associated with the special needs in children? They may require medical assistance. Some of them may have a varied behavioral changes in their activities. or some of them may be mentally ill, so they require mental health caring, and some of them may not have an appropriate or proper growth and development. They may be suffering with respect to development or disabilities with respect to development. And large population is or they suffer from learning disabilities, right? There could be medical issues, behavioral issues, mental health issues, developmental issues, and most important, learning disability issues. These are some of the special needs issues that has to be addressed in children's, and we have seen at least one which has been depicted over here. About five is given here, and we have seen in many cases at least one we have come across in our life. We have seen children suffering from learning disabilities, mental retardation, behavioral disabilities, medical assistance required for some of the physical disabilities, and developmental issues, right? So definitely, when they cannot perform on their own, they require caring and feeding because they cannot sense, they ignore unintentionally. So, they require assistance, and it is true with respect to feeding. So, the problems associated with feeding to such disability or to the children with such disabilities is very much required to be understood, and people who are involved in caretaking should know how to go about it or how to solve the issues, right? Now, how do we define the disabilities? Angavaikalyate. A person with a disability is a person who has a physical impairment or mental impairment, or sometimes both physical as well as mental impairment. So, what is the consequence of this? It substantially limits one or more of the major life activities which a normal child is performing. Right? They cannot perform one or more major normal life activities because they are or they will be suffering from physical impairment or mental impairment, or sometimes even both physical or mental impairment. So this is how the disability is defined. Then what are the diseases or conditions which cause physical or mental impairment? They include, say for example, orthopedic with respect to the bones, visual, and speech and hearing impairments. We have seen many children suffering from the speech and hearing impairments at a very small, like say for example, even the toddlers, they suffer from speech and hearing impairments. We have seen that. Then epilepsy. Epilepsy, I have given an illustration over here. Epilepsy means like it is a disorder associated with the brain function. So the people experience convulsions, sudden falling, and the stiffness of the muscles, and just staring. ನೋಡಿದ್ದನ್ನೇ ನೋಡ್ತಾ ಇರುವಂಥದ್ದು, loss of consciousness. So these are some of the symptoms of epilepsy. And then cerebral palsy. That is, it is an injury to the developing brain very early in the life. ಸೊ ಬ್ರೈನು ಬೆಳವಣಿಗೆ ಆಗ್ತಾ ಇರುವಾಗ ಏನಾದರೂ ಇಂಜುರಿ ಆದರೆ, ಸಡನ್ ಶಾಕ್ ಏನೋ ಒಂದು ನೋಡಬಾರ್ದನ್ನ ನೋಡಿದಾಗ, ಕಣ್ಮುಂದೆ ಅದು ಬಂದಾಗ, ತುಂಬ ಭಯಪಟ್ಟಾಗ, ಬ್ರೈನ್ಗೆ ಇಂಜುರಿ ಆಗುವಂಥದ್ದು. ಫಿಸಿಕಲ್ ಇಂಜುರಿನೇ ಆಗಬೇಕು ಅಂತೇನಿಲ್ಲ. ಸೊ that is called as cerebral palsy. So these are some of the diseases or conditions which causes physical impairment or mental impairment. Then you can have muscular dystrophy and multiple sclerosis. ಅಂದರೆ ಅಂಗಾಂಶಗಳು ಗಟ್ಟಿಯಾಗುವಂಥದ್ದು. So say for example, you can see over here, you cannot hold even a tumbler. You cannot fold your fingers. This is because the nerve cell, ನಮ್ಮ ಬ್ರೈನ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ನರಕೋಶಗಳು ಇರುತ್ತದೆ. ಸೊ ಅವು ಹಾಳಾಗಿದ್ದ ಪಕ್ಷದಲ್ಲಿ you experience multiple sclerosis. It is a disease. This disease is due to damaged neurons ಅಥವಾ ನರಕೋಶಗಳಿಗೆ ತೊಂದರೆ ಆಗಿದ್ದ ಪಕ್ಷದಲ್ಲಿ ಮಲ್ಟಿಪಲ್ ಸ್ಕ್ಲಿರೋಸಿಸ್ ಅನ್ನ ನಾವು ನೋಡಬಹುದು. ಎಲ್ಲ ಆರ್ಗನ್ಸ್ಗೂ ಇದು ಅಫೆಕ್ಟ್ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ. And then you will be suffering from cancer, heart disease, and so on. See, there are several diseases or disorders or complications that makes an individual physically impaired or mentally impaired. In both the cases, we refer to as disability. A person with disability, that means a person with special needs. He needs special attention, special care. So we are concentrating only on feeding issue. So ಈ ತರ ಡಿಸೀಸಸ್ ಇಂದ ಸಫರ್ ಪಡ್ತಾ ಇರುವಂತವರಿಗೆ, ಯಾರ್ಯಾರಿಗೆ ಫಿಸಿಕಲ್ ಚಾಲೆಂಜಸ್ ಇದೆ, ಮೆಂಟಲ್ ಚಾಲೆಂಜಸ್ ಇದೆ, ಅವರಿಗೆ ಫೀಡಿಂಗ್ ಪ್ರಾಬ್ಲಮ್ಸ್ ನ ಓವರ್ಕಮ್ ಮಾಡೋದು ಹೇಗೆ? That is the concept, right? So feeding problems are estimated to occur in up to 25% of normally developing children. ಇದು ಸ್ಪೆಷಲ್ ನೀಡ್ಸ್ ಇರುವಂಥವ್ರಿಗೆ ಮಾತ್ರ ಅಲ್ಲ, ಈವನ್ ನಾರ್ಮಲಿ ಡೆವಲಪಿಂಗ್ ಚಿಲ್ಡ್ರನ್ಸ್ನಲ್ಲೂ ಯು ಫೈಂಡ್ 25% ಆಫ್ ದ ಪ್ರಾಬ್ಲಮ್ಸ್ ವಿತ್ ರೆಸ್ಪೆಕ್ಟ್ ಟು ಫೀಡಿಂಗ್. ನೋಡಿದ್ವಿ ನಾವು, ನಮ್ಮ ಮನೆಗಳಲ್ಲೂ ನೋಡಿದ್ವಿ, ಮಕ್ಕಳಿಗೆ ಫೀಡ್ ಮಾಡೋದೇ ದೊಡ್ಡ ಸಮಸ್ಯೆ ತಾಯಂದಿರಿಗೆ. ಅದರಲ್ಲೂ ಸ್ಪೆಷಲ್ ನೀಡ್ಸ್ ಇದ್ದಾಗಂತೂ ಇನ್ನೂ ತುಂಬಾ ಸಮಸ್ಯೆ ಇದೆ. ಸೊ 35% ಆಫ್ ದ ಚಿಲ್ಡ್ರನ್ ವಿತ್ ನ್ಯೂರೋ ಡೆವಲಪ್ಮೆಂಟಲ್ ಡಿಸೇಬಿಲಿಟೀಸ್, ರೈಟ್? ನ್ಯೂರೋ ಡೆವಲಪ್ಮೆಂಟಲ್ ಡಿಸೇಬಿಲಿಟೀಸ್ ಇದ್ದ ಪಕ್ಷದಲ್ಲಿ ಅವರಿಗೆ ನಾವು ಏನು ಹೇಳ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೀವಿ ಮತ್ತು ಅವರು ಹೇಗೆ ರೆಸ್ಪಾಂಡ್ ಮಾಡಬೇಕು ಇದ್ಯಾವುದೂ ಗೊತ್ತಿರೋದಿಲ್ಲ. ಮತ್ತೆ ಅವರು ಫೀಡ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇರೋದು ಯಾವ ಕಾರಣಕ್ಕೆ, ಅದರ ಅವಶ್ಯಕತೆ ಎಷ್ಟು, they will not be having any idea. So in that case, that it is about 35%. The feeding problem is about 35% in case of children with neurodevelopmental disability. It's a very challenging task for the mothers or the caretakers, because 25% is with respect to normally developing children, right? And one common definition of feeding problem is the inability to have or consume certain food, inability, and number 2, refusing to eat certain foods. ನನಗಿದು ಬೇಡ, ನಾನು ಇದನ್ನು ತಿನ್ನುವುದಿಲ್ಲ, ಇದು ಚೆನ್ನಾಗಿಲ್ಲ, ಇದು ಗಟ್ಟಿಯಾಗಿದೆ, ಇದು ತೆಳ್ಳಗಿದೆ, ಹೀಗೆ we comment on the texture, the color, and we refuse to eat. Children do that. It is a challenging task for the mothers or whoever the person who is involved in feeding the children. It is true with some of the adults too. So common feeding problem is the inability to eat, that is with respect to neurodevelopmental disabilities or in sometimes physical impairment. Inability to eat certain foods or refusal to eat certain foods. So this problem with feeding may lead to significant negative nutritional, developmental and psychological sequelae. So good or proper nutrition is not, we cannot have proper nutrition if you don't take the food, and definitely you cannot expect to have a good growth and development, and there will not be a psychological balance, because the severity of this sequelae is related to the age at onset. ಯಾವ ವಯಸ್ಸಿನಿಂದ ಈ ತರ ಒಂದು ಬಿಹೇವಿಯರ್ ಕಾಣಿಸ್ತಾ ಇದೆ, ಅಂಡ್ ಡಿಗ್ರಿ ಪ್ರಮಾಣ ಎಷ್ಟು, ಅಂಡ್ ಡ್ಯೂರೇಷನ್ ಆಫ್ ದ ಫೀಡಿಂಗ್ ಪ್ರಾಬ್ಲಮ್, ಎಷ್ಟು ವರ್ಷ, ಎಷ್ಟು ದಿವಸ, ಎಷ್ಟು ತಿಂಗಳು ಫೀಡಿಂಗ್ ಪ್ರಾಬ್ಲಮ್ಸ್ ಕಾಣಿಸ್ತಾ ಇದೆ. ಸೊ if you can recognize at an early stage, management is easy, and recognition and management both are important. So if you ignore, ಹೌದು ನಮ್ಮ ಮಗು ತಿನ್ನೋದಿಲ್ಲ ಅದು ಹಾಗೇನೆ ಅಂತ ಇಗ್ನೋರ್ ಮಾಡ್ತು ಅಂತ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ದ ಪ್ರಾಬ್ಲಮ್ ಬಿಕಮ್ಸ್ ಬಿಗ್ ಅಂಡ್ ಬಿಗರ್. ಸೊ ಅರ್ಲಿ ರೆಕಗ್ನಿಷನ್ ಅಂಡ್ ಮ್ಯಾನೇಜ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಆರ್ ಈಕ್ವಲಿ ಇಂಪಾರ್ಟೆಂಟ್, right? You should be aware of the age at which the problem was identified, the onset, the degree, what is the degree of the problem, that means the inability or refusal, and what is the duration of the feeding problem that you are experiencing. So early recognition and management are important. If you recognize at an early stage, and it is easy to manage the problems, right? Now children with special needs may have delayed oral skills. What are the problems associated? So they may continue to use bottles. ಓರಲ್ ಸ್ಕಿಲ್ಸ್ ಅಂತ ಏನು ಹೇಳ್ತೀವಿ, ಅಗದು ಜಗದು ತಿನ್ನುವಂಥದ್ದು, ಬಾಯಿ ಆಡಿಸುವಂಥದ್ದು, these are oral skills. So eating is also a skill. So if you do not have the oral skills developed in the right time, that is delayed oral skills are there, what happens, the children continue to use bottles or sippy cups or consume pureed foods, semi solid, longer than the typical children of their age. So this is an important problems associated with special needs or children with special needs who have delayed oral skills. So they may continue use of bottles or sippy cups or consume semi-solid foods. Now children with special needs may be dependent on tube feedings in adverse conditions, in serious conditions, where sometimes if the child feeds, there is a risk of aspiration, ಹೋಗಿ ಗಂಟಲಲ್ಲಿ ಸಿಕ್ಕಿ ಹಾಕಿಕೊಳ್ಳುವಂಥದ್ದು, ನುಂಗಲಿಕ್ಕೆ ಬರದೇ ಇರುವಂಥ ಪರಿಸ್ಥಿತಿ, ಇದೆಲ್ಲ ನ್ಯೂರೋ ಡೆವಲಪ್ಮೆಂಟಲ್ ಡಿಸಾರ್ಡರ್ಸ್ನಲ್ಲಿ ಕಾಣಿಸುವಂಥದ್ದು. ಸೊ ಅವರಿಗೆ ಏನು ಮಾಡಬೇಕು, ಟ್ಯೂಬ್ನಲ್ಲಿ ಫೀಡ್ ಮಾಡಬೇಕು. ಸೊ ದೇ ಆರ್ ಡಿಪೆಂಡೆಂಟ್ ಆನ್ ಟ್ಯೂಬ್ ಫೀಡಿಂಗ್ಸ್ ಫಾರ್ ದೋಸ್ ಚಿಲ್ಡ್ರನ್ಸ್ ವೇರ್ ಇಟ್ ಇಸ್ ನಾಟ್ ಸೇಫ್ ಫಾರ್ ದೆಮ್ ಟು ಸ್ವ್ಯಾಲೋ ಡ್ಯೂ ಟು ರಿಸ್ಕ್ ಆಫ್ ಆಸ್ಪಿರೇಷನ್. ನೆಕ್ಸ್ಟ್, ಡಿಕ್ರೀಸ್ಡ್ ಚ್ಯೂವಿಂಗ್ ಎಫಿಷಿಯನ್ಸಿ, ಸಾಕಷ್ಟು ಅಗಿಯದೇ ಇರುವಂಥದ್ದು, and delayed oral skills may cause meals to take longer time. If a child is spending more than 1 hour per meal, then it is a serious issue. Most of the time we do not take it seriously, the mothers do not take it seriously. A child may be eating or maybe feeding for nearly 1 hour or more than 1 hour, right? TV ನೋಡ್ತಾ ಮತ್ತೆ ಬೇರೆ ಬೇರೆ ಆಟ ಆಡ್ತಾ ಹೆಚ್ಚು ಕಡಿಮೆ ಮೋರ್ ದೆನ್ 1 ಅವರ್ ತಗೊಳ್ತಾ ಇದೆ ಟೈಮ್ ಒಂದು ಮೀಲ್ಗೆ ಅಂತ ಅಂದ್ರೆ that is an serious issue. But most of the time we ignore that, right? So the family should not spend more than 1 hour per meal to feed a child. And special needs can affect a child's sensory system. Sensory problems can make it difficult for children to eat in a crowded environment. ಸೇ ಫಾರ್ ಎಕ್ಸಾಂಪಲ್ ಕೆಲವರಿಗೆ ಸ್ಕೂಲ್ನಲ್ಲಿ ಅಥವಾ ಲಂಚ್ ರೂಮ್ಸ್ ಅಂತ ಏನಿರ್ತದೆ ಸ್ಕೂಲ್ನಲ್ಲಿ, ಅಲ್ಲಿ ತಿನ್ನಲಿಕ್ಕೆ ಇಷ್ಟ ಆಗುವುದಿಲ್ಲ. ದೇ ಹೆಸಿಟೇಟ್ ಟು ಈಟ್ ಇನ್ ಎ ಕ್ರೌಡೆಡ್ ಎನ್ವಿರಾನ್ಮೆಂಟ್, ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ ಸಮ್ಟೈಮ್ಸ್ ದೇ ಮೇ ರಿಫ್ಯೂಸ್ ಬಿಕಾಸ್ ದೇ ಕೆನಾಟ್ accept ಡಿಫ್ರೆಂಟ್ ಫುಡ್ ಟೆಕ್ಸ್ಚರ್. ಅದನ್ನ ಕೆಲವರಿಗೆ ಇಷ್ಟ ಆಗದೇನೆ ಇರ್ಬೋದು, ತುಂಬ ಸಾಫ್ಟ್ ಇದೆ, ತುಂಬ ತೆಳು ಇದೆ, ತುಂಬ ಹಾರ್ಡ್ ಇದೆ, ಹೀಗೆ ದೇ ಮೇ ಗಿವ್ ಕಮೆಂಟ್ಸ್. ಸೊ special needs can affect a child's sensory system, right? So I'll try to give general tips and tricks to try for children with feeding difficulties. If the picky eating seems picky andre selected to be sensory based, encourage the child to play with food to get used to them, right? And number two, encourage the child to get more involved with food preparation, and kids are more likely to try things if they help prepare the meal. ಅವರೇ ಪ್ರಿಪೇರ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ದು ಅಂತಂದರೆ ಅವ್ರು ತಿಂತಾರೆ. This is one of the important trick. And allow the child to eat along with the parents, and what the parents eat should also be shared with the child. And have a consistent routine at meal time. Don't change the time. ಯಾವ ಟೈಮ್ಗೆ ಬ್ರೇಕ್ಫಾಸ್ಟ್ ಫುಡ್ ಇರಬೇಕು ಆ ಟೈಮನ್ನೇ ಕನ್ಸಿಸ್ಟೆಂಟಾಗಿ ಮೇಂಟೈನ್ ಮಾಡುವಂಥದ್ದು. ಆಮೇಲೆ ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ತುಂಬ ತಣ್ಣಗಾಗಿದ್ದರೆ ಬಿಸಿ ಮಾಡುವಂಥದ್ದು, ಬಿಕಾಸ್ ಎ ಸ್ಮಾಲ್ ಚೇಂಜ್ ಇನ್ ಟೆಂಪರೇಚರ್ ಮೇಕ್ಸ್ ಈಸಿಯರ್ ಟು ಕನ್ಸ್ಯೂಮ್, ರೈಟ್? ಸೊ ದೀಸ್ ಆರ್ ಸಮ್ ಆಫ್ ದ ಟಿಪ್ಸ್ ಅಸೋಸಿಯೇಟೆಡ್ ವಿತ್ ದ feeding problems. So with this, I'll stop my discussion over here, and we'll continue our discussion in the next session. Till then, thank you very much for your kind listening. Thank you.